America, we need to sharpen our discussion on values, and it will help us all.
You know, I made a talk in the central part of the country, in St. Louis, Missouri, and I got more calls, more positive calls, and more letters. I'm still getting them, praising me as one of the few black leaders that had the courage to stand up and be counted, and to commend you and making that great contribution to the dialogue about changing things in America.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people chose to criticize and to ridicule rather than to focus and to face the problem. And you were very courageous to swim against the tide on this, because I know many of your cohorts probably said, "Roy, what are you doing?" He says, "You shouldn't be supporting the vice president." He said, "Look, it's not just the vice president, but it's what the ideas that he has put forward. And we need to discuss those ideas and to look at the importance of values." And I'll tell you, Roy, since that speech, we certainly have had a lot of discussion around the country on family values. I noticed even Bill Clinton decided to make the first 15 minutes of his acceptance speech on family values.
You have a convert. You have converted the governor.
We have converted the governor. We welcome him to the debate, and I am convinced to this very day that had I not raised that issue of the poverty of values that is challenging America in the San Francisco speech, Bill Clinton probably wouldn't even have talked about family values in his acceptance speech.
I have with me here my son, Niger. You met him last week?
Yes.
He represents that growing group of young black people who are moving away from left-wing liberalism and defining themselves as independents and conservatives and even Republicans.
Yep. Well, the problem with the liberal ideology is this, is that they believe in just having handouts rather than giving somebody a hand up. They believe in very strong involvement from the government. And what has happened with the liberal ideology is that they've created a sense of dependency over the years. And what we've tried to do, and I know that you join me in this, instead of teaching dependency and preaching dependency on state and welfare and things of that sort, we need to encourage development, skill development, educational development, individual development. Because if you develop that individual, you're going to make a stronger individual, and they're going to have much more hope in our society.
Yes, Mr. Vice President, this is Niger, INNIS. Good talking with you again.
Niger, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing just fine. You know, Bill Clinton and Al Gore say that they represent the future. I think that's pretty much malarkey. I think that you represent the future, and I think that George Bush represents a steady hand for the immediate future. But what I wanted to ask you was this. How could you maximize the energizing of the black community, the galvanizing of the black community, particularly the youth in black America, that occurred after the hearings of Justice Thomas? My father referred to there's a new wave in black America, particularly young black America, towards a rugged individualism and being independent as opposed to dependent. How do you see yourself maximizing this for the fall campaign?
Well, see, I think the Clarence Thomas nomination was very helpful to the debate and the role model of our in our society. Clarence Thomas came from poverty, abject poverty, and he rose from poverty to now having a lifetime appointment on the United States Supreme Court. And he did that as an African American. He did that as a black man that faced the odds and met the challenge and was successful in life. And he has a lot of critics out there, but you know what? He ought to be a role model, because you know what paid off? Hard work, values. He thanked the nuns, as a matter of fact, in his opening statement to the nation for helping him along in life. And he's a man of great courage and great intelligence, and I'm convinced that he'll go down as a very good United States Supreme Court justice. But what it did show is that, especially to the black Americans, that you didn't have to be liberal to make it, that there are some conservatives out there. And I think that the younger people, Niger, like yourself, are going to be more attracted to a conservative approach where You want to get away from paternalism and dependency and to become more independent. And you know what I've always talked to the African American community about is this. Why should you be automatically part of the Democratic Party? You got a two-party system here. And we shouldn't have a breakdown of 90% be Democrats and only 10% be Republicans. It ought to be a much more fair balance. And I think that the Democratic Party just takes black Americans for granted. Maybe the Republicans need to do a better job, and I think we probably do, in communicating and offering us some good ideas. But things should change.
Let me thank you for being with us, Mr. Vice President. And let me enlist your aid in getting a chance to express that point of view at the Republican National Convention. We need to have that point of view being expressed by many of the bright young black men and black women around this country. Thank you for being with us.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
WABC with Roy Innis.
How you doing, Mr. Innis? I've waited a long time to speak to you, Mr. Innis. I do not agree with most of the things you say. However, I do find that you have a conviction about whatever you feel, so I respect that.
Thank you.
Okay. The media is constantly being lambasted as being liberal. However, if you look at the way the media reported the L.A. riots, they constantly showed the same tapes of blacks rioting in central L.A. Now, we all agree that there were also whites and there were also Hispanics. But if the media was so liberal, why did they constantly rerun the tapes of the blacks and not rerun the tapes of the Hispanics and of the whites rioting? Also, the lawyer for the Korean store owners, a female, I can't remember her name, one of the comments she made is when she went out into the street and she saw people looting, she said the majority of these people were either Hispanic and or white. But we don't hear that. We didn't hear that from the liberal media or the alleged liberal media.
Well, let me tell you, I don't believe that. You see, that area I know quite well, and the area is majority black. You do have whites and you do have Hispanics. You have Hispanics that fall into both categories, as blacks and as whites. The plain fact is the majority of the people rioting were the hoodlum gangs. They weren't the majority of black people, nor the majority of Hispanic people, nor the majority of whites. But there were the majority of black hoodlum gangs. And I am not going to the sophistry that the liberal media is playing on us to, at one hand, show the rioters who were overwhelmingly black, and at the same time give the intimation that, well, there were a lot of whites there that weren't showed. There's as a head game that the media plays with black folks to get us squabbling about the wrong thing. The issue that we should be concerned with is not how many whites were rioting, right? But how many black mothers we saw with station wagons with their kids. Now, I think the most damaging, there were 3 sites that were most damaging in that whole incident. Of course, the beating of Rodney King by those 3 hoodlums that call themselves LAPD. I didn't say 4, I said 3.
Yeah.
No, I said 3 on purpose because Officer Brigino, who was indicted today, along with these other bums, who should have been indicted.
He tried to stop him.
Exactly, he tried to stop it.
Okay.
And how in the hell can the L.A. County prosecutor, Ira Reiner, indict him? And how can the feds, who go in now to correct the mistakes of Ira Reiner, how can they indict Brigino? In fact, they have endangered the case because the jury is going to see that Brigino was the only one of 21 officers there, 4 that were actively involved, and 17 who stood idly by and enjoy the Late Show, which was the beating, the inhuman beating of Rodney King. Brigino was the only one that attempted to physically interfere with those 3 guys and stop. He used an unfortunate thing in that he put his foot on the neck of Rodney King, and that got him indicted. But again, it is my job to tell the truth about Brigino, to tell the truth about the 3 hoodlums who beat up Rodney King, to tell the truth about those hoodlums who grabbed that man, Reginald Denny, out of that truck and beat him senseless, and to tell the truth of the black mothers with their cars and station wagons. Those 3 things concern me more than anything else, more than what Hispanics were riding, what whites were riding. It concerned me that I saw mothers doing this. And I had to correct this. I mean, I can correct the other things later, but the greater evil, the greater damage to the psyche of our people. The greater poverty of value that I must correct must be the fact that the mother feels comfortable to go looting with her kids. Looting is wrong. Looting with your kids is criminal.
Mr. Innis, I'd like to make one more point before I go. I'm a black man. I make approximately $60,000 per year.
Yes.
I've never committed a crime in my life. My mother raised 8 kids. We are from the Virgin Islands. All of us are pretty upright, moral citizens.
Right.
However, if I walk into any shop or just walk down the street, I'm already perceived as being a criminal. Now, mind you, blacks may have a tendency of committing certain types of crimes, but Ivan Boesky and Michael Milken, these people let down on Wall Street who commit financial crimes, crimes against the financial community, do we stereotype them and say, well, all Jews commit crimes on Wall Street because many blacks may commit crimes of mugging? Or we don't do that.
Good question.
Stereotypes happen to stick much harder to blacks than it does to whites. And that's the point I'm making. And I feel that when I, as a man, as an upright citizen in America, can walk down the street and be afforded the same type of view from any person walking next to me,
very
as a
good
white
point.
man is,
I'm glad you said that.
I will be happy and I'll love America and I'll die for America.
Okay, brother, I'm so glad you said that, because that is exactly the reason I am saying what I'm saying. As long as decent black young folks like you become so oversensitive that you feel you have to become defensive about bums, that's how long it will take to achieve what you just said you wanted to achieve. When we are the first to come out and criticize our own, all right, I expect that blacks should criticize blacks first, that Jews should criticize Jews first, Hispanics should criticize Hispanics first, Americans should criticize Americans first. When we do that, we raise the moral level. All right? We are operating in a high moral plane. And when people hear us doing that, they then cannot identify us all as an entire criminal conspiracy. They will have to say, well, obviously, they're talking about one element, a minority element, a small element in that group. But I heard some outstanding black people, some outstanding Hispanic people talking about decency and about values. And that is the mistake of black leadership, that they continually apologize and alibi and acquiesce to the most indecent elements, given a general perception in the public's mind that we are all a bunch of criminals. Thank you. We now go to a traffic break with Joe Nolan. This is Roy Innis sitting in for Bob Brown.